Hume asked, and in the answers that he gave to them, there was no reference to God.
Hume was a sceptic and probably an atheist for most of his life, and so he had to disguise his views to avoid persecution. Here's Peter Millikan of Oxford University.
Prior to Hume, people thought of the world as designed by a divine intelligence and saw our intelligence, our minds, as given by God so as to enable us to understand the intricacy of his creation. What Hume does, he takes out the divine creator, says, no, actually we've got no reason to suppose that the world was created by a perfect being. And he also, perhaps inevitably, displaces us so that we are no longer to think of our reason as being some faint copy of a divine faculty, and instead to see it as an augmented and very powerful instance of an animal faculty.
He doesn't think that there's a God-given faculty called reason which processes experience into thoughts. He thinks it just happens naturally. For example, if a baby puts its hand near the fire, it'll pretty rapidly learn not to, and it would be afraid of doing the same thing again. But so would an animal. Animals learn from experience, babies learn from experience. It's the same kind of mechanism. And Hume's the first to stress that identity of similarity. So I think he's the first naturalist in philosophy.
The way you've described him, it's actually quite a radical approach to question some of the received views that were dominant in his society. Did that get him into hot water ever?
Oh, it did indeed, yes. His anti-theological or anti-religious views got him into quite a lot of trouble. He failed to get the chair in Edinburgh because of that. In that opposition, he was very nearly impeached by the Synod of the Church of Scotland, but his friends sprang to his defence, and that was averted. He was very humorous about that. He said they think of giving me over to the devil, which they believe they have the power to do. He was completely sceptical and the great infidel, he was called sometimes.
Hume was called the Great Infidel because, in an age of believers, he questioned the reasons people gave for their certainty that God existed. Was he, though, deeply sceptical about everything? Here's Peter Millikan.
Many people think of Hume as an irrationalist because, as we've seen, he is sceptical about the pretensions of reason. But in fact, Hume is very pro-science, anti-superstition, and it's quite a delicate balance. We've seen that he reduces, as it were, scientific reasoning to an animal instinct, the instinct for expecting the future to resemble the past. But then he wants to advocate that and say, that's how we ought to reason about the world, because actually that's the only basis that we have for learning anything about the world.
He's not necessarily sceptical about, for example, whether the sun will rise tomorrow. And I think it's a mistake to see him as sort of agonising about that kind of proposition. What he's sceptical about is the power of reason to tell you that the sun will rise tomorrow. He thinks your confidence in the uniformity of nature is one of those animal propensities, and it might let you down. You can't argue that it won't. But you can go on living your life as if it won't, and that's what we are, in fact, bound to do.
With Hume, modern philosophy took wings. He was a model of clarity and integrity, both as a writer and thinker. Simon Blackburn sums up his importance beautifully.
The reason why people love him, I think, is his writings do breathe a great benign kind of humanity. He has a kindly aspect to him, unlike, say, Kant, who always seems rather prickly and sharp-edged. Hume is rounded. He was literally round by the time of his death, anyhow, and that somehow comes across. I think one of the phrases he uses is the calm sunshine of the mind, and I've always thought that applied to Hume entirely. The calm sunshine of his mind breathes out in a lot of his works.